So one, we've been doing these webinars and we love them because we want to figure out a way from a community perspective. What can we take? How can we take what we do at the center and provide resources to our community that are free, that might allow you to be curious, that gives you access to ask questions with some people that are in the field that can help, you know? And so that's why we kind of put this together, and we're trying to get creative in all the different topics that we have. The Wellness Connection is going through a really exciting time in our history. For one, my good friend Kristen Staples, if you're doing Break,
Oh,
she's right there. Um, she's was with me back in 2015, and we have reconnected. We're singing the lovely song "Reunited," and it feels so good for like a month. And we have been trying to figure out what can we do to make the center better, to provide more resources. And she's our executive director, so she's hosting all these wonderful webinars, so you'll be seeing her. We've also added med management. That is super freaking exciting because now we can,
great.
provide med management, and we can ensure that it's going to be a collaborative effort with all of our clinicians that we have. Our big issue with med management is that oftentimes it's very hard to get psychiatrists and therapists to talk because we're all so busy. And at the Wellness Connection, we hold what we call a peer consultation session every week, where we talk about shared cases and what's happening that allows us to see, is the meds working? Are they not working? Do we need meds? Do we maybe not need meds? It allows us to be super collaborative. We've also added a new licensed marriage and family therapist. We're getting a high demand for therapists that will work with couples and entire families, because we know that when one part of the system or a family is hurting, the entire system is affected. So we need to make sure that we have people that can work with the whole family. And Gina is joining us, and she's got some mad skills. She's been practicing for about 20 years. She's working on her PhD right now, but she's trained in internal family systems. She's trained in EMDR, which you're going to be hearing more about later on. And she's also trained in neurofeedback. So we've got some, we really don't think that one size fits all at the Wellness Connection. We want you to have different things that you can try, and neurofeedback is an exciting new thing that we're adding to our center. We're also have a couple of groups starting in the fall and the summer. We've got a grief group, and we've got some kids groups that Ellen's going to talk about towards the end of her presentation. And then the farmers market. I started this bad boy in 2009, and did I think it would be around still? It is. And so we believe that getting healthy, good food in your system is very important in helping you live a healthy life. So we sponsor and run the farmers market over at Stone Springs Hospital, and that's kicking in April. So come see us, feed your body well, and it will treat you well. And then I think that's a whole lot of announcements. Before we continue moving, I want to ask Finn if he was able to get into the other place, because I know I can. I might jump off and go over there and try and interact if Finn is struggling. Do you know Kristen?
He said he can't get in.
Okay, so I'm gonna probably jump. I'm gonna use my
I think
iPad.
we're gonna try to send a mass email to everybody. Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm gonna let Ellen get started, and I'm gonna put me so you can't see me, the worried face that I have, that people are there to them. So I'm gonna go take care of that, Ellen, while you show them what you love.
Let's just introduce our wonderful art therapist, Ellen Coplon. Thank you so much for sharing today.
Yeah, let me go ahead and share my screen with everyone. Well, thank you. Like she said, my name is Ellen Coplon. I'm the art therapist at the Wellness Connection. I've been working here for about 3 years, coming in April. Before that, I've worked in a therapeutic day school and a hospital. So let's go in. So first things first, what is art therapy? As you can tell from this image, there is a lot here, but art therapy is essentially combining traditional therapy with art. So what I do is I lead clients through creative self-expression while still focusing on creating a therapeutic relationship and using our sessions to kind of process the healing non-verbally and give them a space to feel relaxed and creative and kind of let them dive into that piece of it that doesn't feel so heavy. It takes a lot to put it out onto a piece of paper, and it's able to be recognized and processed through that way. So there are two styles of art therapy that I use day to day. The first being art as therapy and art is therapy. What we know is that art in any form, any creative form, whether it's music, dance, movement, like drawing or writing, is inherently therapeutic. It's something that brings a lot of people comfort. You know, we see those in the coloring books that people have. It's all super accessible at this point. And the art is therapy I use a lot because it puts emphasis on the act of creating the art rather than interpreting it. It really just focuses on building resilience and using that time to kind of play into some mindfulness and just be able to relax. The art as therapy is a little bit more psychotherapeutic. It focuses on me being whatever is drawn is the idea is that it is a part of the person. It taps into the subconscious, and whatever those feelings that are coming out are internal. My role in doing that is allowing the client to kind of work through the processing and kind of really just guide them through the interpretation of the art. We're going to see two examples of each of these things and a little bit later on in the presentation, just so you can kind of see which I do. I do both in a session just because working with children and adolescents, which is mainly what I work with at this moment, sometimes it's hard to dig into that interpretation with the younger ones. You know, developmentally, kids can't think abstractly at the time. So did they draw a house because they wanted to, or is there something else happening there? So this is a big question that I get when I meet clients is how is this different from an art class? So I did work as an art teacher for a couple of years, so I was able to really dig into this one. Art therapy focuses on the relationship with the client. I believe that the therapeutic relationship is the most important part of therapy. I spend probably the first 3 to 4 sessions with the client focusing on that rapport building, because if they're not comfortable with me or in the space, then the work that we are there to do is not really able to be done until there's some form of trust in it. Now, in an art class, there's the student, the teacher, and probably like 15 to 20 other students. So that fairly personal relationship that you create, like in therapy, isn't really there. The art therapy room is confidential. I tell every client that whatever comes in here stays in here. And what your parents need to know is specific, and that's when I'll break confidentiality. But in the classroom setting, everything is out there for everyone to hear. Art classes also focus on a product, making something, to specific rules to follow curriculum, where in art therapy, there really isn't any rules. It's all based on the self-expression, it's experiential, and it's reflective. We spend a lot of time reflecting on the art, what was made, why they made it that way, why they chose those materials. Whereas in an art class, you are creating something to be graded that meets specific guidelines, meets a specific rubric. And in here, any project or prompt that's given is generally open-ended. And we'll see one of the examples at the end shows an open-ended prompt. Another really good question I get is who can benefit from art therapy? A lot of people think that it can only be used with children and adolescents because of the art piece, but I have done really successful groups when I worked at the hospital with adults, and it can be used in various settings, you know, clinics, private practices, schools, hospitals, after school programs. And it has been proven to work with people with lots of different things going on. So I see a lot of ADHD, anxiety, stress management, self-esteem. It's also really shown great work with trauma survivors and people who suffer from dementia. There are specific directives that can be done with people with dementia to kind of help bring them back to themselves in a little bit. Okay, so 3 different things that I focus on. So, what is emotional regulation? And it would be, how do you guys regulate? I can tell you that during the day, like if I do not go to the gym in the morning, I will be a wreck for the rest of the day. And that's how I choose to regulate my emotions. You guys want to put in the chat some things that you do? I would love to see it. So what we know is emotional regulation is how our ability to manage and understand our feelings. So we got yoga and walk my dog. Yeah, I also play with my cat. That is another emotional regulation tool that I use. Walking and creative expressive art daily. Yeah. So going off of that one, art is able to help with emotional regulation because it provides a safe way to express yourself and what's going on in the day. Whether that's like a mood chart or just a quick doodle drawing, something like that, it helps activate that creativeness in your body and helps you manage and regulate your emotions. What you see on the right is a feeling chart that I have done with 95% of my clients. What is asked of them is that each little circle turns into a face with a color that matches that emotion to them and the name of the emotion. We use this for mood check-ins when they come into session, like, what kind of day did you have? They can tell me it was a weird day, and maybe they put weird on their feeling, and they are able to show what that looks like. Another thing that people use a lot just to kind of regulate is the repetitiveness of mandala coloring sheets. The repetitiveness is very calming because it is a continuous process that is being done. But yeah, mood check-ins. I mean, anybody, if you are seeing like your kids or yourself are struggling with emotional regulation, you can find feeling charts or mood sheets all over the internet. And it's just really helpful to kind of give them that autonomy to tell you how you're feeling in bigger words. So coping skills, just another thing that I use a lot. A lot of times kids are coming in with anger or just sadness, and holding those really big feelings in your body is hard for anyone at any age if you can't figure out how to cope with them. So what we do with the coping skills is we just kind of develop different ways to cope. Art can be used as a stress relief. And like some people said in the chat for the last slide, that is something that they do daily. And it helps, using the art can help show like the problem solving, like working through whatever the thing is that you struggle to cope your feelings with. And again, it's just that emotional release and able to like reflect on what happened. It's much easier to go back and reflect on the situation than in it, which is why coping skills is such a big piece of the work that I do. I did want to show an example of art journaling because that is something that I have just started doing on my own. And I find it really, first of all, like relaxing, but also helpful for like regulating what is going on without any judgment. It's a safe place. It's a physical safe place. It combines the written word and visual images and just kind of can take it through whatever my day is going through. And that's what it's for. And the last one that I go through before the images is trauma. So this one I was really excited about this slide because of the images that are here, but I'll share that in a second. So trauma needs specialized care. And here at the Wellness Connection, we have many trauma-informed clients, meaning that they are taking the trauma into the consideration during the work. Meeting the person where they're at, because the trauma can be really heavy, whichever kind of trauma it is. And the trauma just sits inside the body and the subconscious, affecting how people respond, how they behave, their emotions. People with PTSD who have like the images returning and like the sounds having that be activated. The art therapy can help as it provides an outlet for processing these emotions because they're very heavy and they're not things that everybody can understand. But in a therapeutic space with the art, it allows it to recreate kind of like their narrative and kind of change that story without needing to verbalize all of it. And I wanted to point out these images. So these are from a National Geographic article called Behind the Mask, Revealing the Trauma of War. So the art therapist at Walter Reed, just over in Bethesda, has done a very like extensive mask making project with veterans. These are just two that I took out of there, just and veterans, two separate veterans made this. And if you get a chance to go read that article and see it, one of the first quotes actually is in it was just paraphrasing. A veteran who was a man was like, he was so against the mask making because he's like, first of all, I'm a man. I don't hold like dainty paintbrushes. Second of all, I'm not an artist. And third of all, I'm not in kindergarten. But goes into say that he was so wrong and was able to really like put the experience of like who he has become experiencing what he experienced into the mask and onto the mask. Some of them are really intense, but if you do get a chance, I would suggest going and looking at it because it does give a really good insight to kind of, PTSD of veterans and just a little bit more of what art therapy can do for people. Kristen gave me this lovely quote from a podcast that she saw that says, when feeling unregulated, instead of thinking, what can I do? What can I create? And I think that's just great because I think that kind of comes down to like what I do as an art therapist in general. Like I have seen kids come in completely unregulated. They either like went on a field trip and it was super fun, or they had a really hard test. Like I know the standardized tests, at least in Loudoun County, are like every couple of months, and those can be a lot. So instead of what can I do? What if this went wrong? Instead of thinking all like the negative, it's like, well, what can I create? Like I'm here's a marker and a piece of paper. Like show me what's coming up. And anybody can really do that just with a piece of paper and a doodle all whenever. So I wanted to get in some artwork that showed what the two styles of art therapy that I do are. So this first one is a mandala doodle. So basically a mandala is anything inside a circle. So what this person was asked to do was just to scribble inside of it. And they were asked to add colors if they wanted to. This person obviously did. And this is an example of the art is therapy. Like we can sit in here, I did put some questions in the slide. So if you guys want to go ahead and put in the chat, like what do you see? Like what stands out to you? Just any notices, but this isn't necessarily one that you would sit down and process. I mean, we can, right? If you just think about, and this kind of goes into what Susan's going to talk about at the end, like this person had so many different things going on that they made so many different shapes with colors. In a day-to-day life, like people are managing like their houses, they have kids, their families, just any day-to-day task. And this person put it out onto that piece of paper of all the things they need to get done, but they separated themselves from it. And then our second piece is, there we go. So this is the bridge drawing. This is an example as an art as therapy. So in this instance, I would give a directive that I'll walk through with you, give them probably 40 minutes time. So sessions are 50 minutes or about 40 minutes, and to process a little bit at the end. And by process, I mean interpret. So in this picture, the person was asked to, on the left side, draw something that they are leaving, and on the right side, draw something that they are going to. They were then asked to put different things underneath the bridge that could be obstacles for what they're trying to get to, and then color it. Any coloring material that you can use. This person used markers and crayons and colored pencils, it looks like. And then at the end of that, they were asked to mark themselves on the bridge somewhere, whether that's with a symbol or like a little stick figure, a dot. This person used a blue rectangle. So again, I'll ask, what do you see in this? Like, what stands out? If we were to interpret this together, what is something that you notice? What we do know is, at least on the left side, there is clouds. The trees don't have any leaves on them, probably winter time, right? And it's like the color on this side is very gray, very dark. The cliffs against that side of the bridge are like much more rocky. So they're leaving something dark and want to go somewhere hopeful. Yeah, exactly. And the bridge looks shaky. So I'm really glad that somebody brought the bridge up, because the bridge plays a huge role into interpreting this art. So what we know is bridges can be made out of lots of things. We have concrete bridges, we have metal bridges, we have wood bridges, and then we have rope bridges, which this kind of looks like. So this one, and there's wind blowing. So the idea is that that bridge is really shaky, and crossing that bridge, from what this person was saying, is that really tricky. It feels really shaky. They feel really unsure if they can get to that side, but know that what they're leaving, even though they've left a little bit, like they haven't gotten very far, but they know that they're on their way to something happier and hopeful, and that feels better, right? And someone brought up the change in the sky. Yeah, so this side is much more blue. There are birds. This one has clouds and gray sky. And then even just underneath it, walking to that side, there's like rocks and like really strong waves. So it's just, kind of a question of whether or not they can do this. And not for nothing, but this was made by somebody after the time change. So it gets darker in the morning, but now it's brighter in the evening, which helps a lot of people that I know. A lot of people that I've talked to this week are like, it's bright here. Like it's late and I can see the sky. Does anyone have any questions about anything that I went over before I jump into some of our next exciting little things? Susan, if you see any pop up.
Okay, guys, you can either put it in the chat or the Q&A. I think this concludes a little bit about what Ellen's going to do as far as her art therapy discussion, and then we're going to go into some announcements that she's going to make. But I wanted to just make a couple of observations, if I can, Ellen, before, as people are writing down
Of course,
their
absolutely. Do you want me to go back?
no, no, no. Just stay where you are. But if you want to put it in the Q&A, I don't see any there. I'm going to maybe direct everybody to stay in the chat, because it's just so I'm not going between two spaces. If you have a question, just throw it in the chat. But there's a couple things that I want to share why it was so important for me to have Ellen as part of our team. Ellen has known I've been a big lover of the arts for a long, long time. You guys heard me talking or being stressed with my son Finn, who's in the background. He's with Kristen at the office there. And we've just always known that art and music have been such an important part of our healing journey that we've had as a family, and the resources that we've used. And what I love about art is that so often as therapists, and Ellen, you'll agree with this with me, I'm certain, that we're getting our clients' conscious mind. It's like what you know. And guess what? Your conscious mind isn't always your friend. Your friend tells you a lot of negative beliefs that aren't true. What I absolutely love is that when you use things like art or music or anything creative, it allows you to lose yourself and to put your focus in one particular space so that your subconscious can start to speak. It's so funny. I have one of my clients is on this webinar, and she and I have been texting off to the side about it. I mean, everyone always thinks, oh, art and play is just for kids. Well, we do sand tray therapy here as well. And it's so interesting when you ask a client to get away from their conscious mind and to jump into their subconscious, and they create a world in sand. And they're always surprised at what all the subliminal kind of messages are that come out from that piece. So, Ellen's favorite part, my favorite part, is the processing part. Once you've created what you have, that we get to sit down and art just really starts a conversation. That's kind of how I see it. It's like, holy criminy, I never realized this, or why did I put that there, or why am I turned backwards in the back of the sand tray? Like, it's even the positioning of things is really critical. And so once we can identify or start a conversation, it allows the brain to then turn into that space of trying to problem solve. But guess what, folks? We can't problem solve things that we don't know. So what I love about the arts is that it brings to the front things that we don't even know. And to treat things like trauma, whether we're dealing with people that have been victims of abuse or have been in war, or any of our veterans, they usually sometimes don't have access to that subconscious because their body is in such a protective state. There's no access to it. And so the arts allow us to kind of get there. So I just wanted to share why this is so important and why it's different, and that it's for all people. It's not just for little kids. Many clients will look at me saying, "You're going to make me play and sing." And I don't know if I'm going to do something that's kind of weird. If you can see me, see back there, those are all my miniatures that go into my sand tray. It's over in the corner. Do you see that little thing over there? So I am someone who mainly works with adults and couples. And I run a retreat here where people come, and I make all these grown up people play in my sand because they're like, holy crap, I had no idea I was holding on to this thing. And had no idea why I went to grab that particular miniature. And it just starts, and then all of a sudden you see the brain do what I call the domino effect. All of a sudden you watch people go, and all of a sudden all these things start to make sense. So if it's something that you've ever been curious about and you've never done it, and you've been super devoted to mental health, allow yourself to do this. And if you want to just come and play, hey, I'm happy to open up our play therapy. We have a whole room that's now devoted to doing sand tray. So I'd love to help you guys explore some of this if this is something you want to do. So I don't see any questions. How about if you just let us know, was this helpful? Is there something that you wanted to know that we didn't share, that, you've got Ellen and you've got me, and we love talking about this, and we've got some times? Or do you have a child that you're working with, or a student that you have that you're like, I'm really struggling with something and I can't get through to them? We can, brainstorm with you if you'd like.
Susan, somebody has asked Ellen to describe the typical art therapy session.
Oh, lovely.
Sure. Okay. So I'll go through a couple. So the first initial session that I have with the client is very focused on rapport building. So if that's a kid, I am leaving out bunches of different art supplies, and we are just letting them create and get comfortable in the space. If it's the first session that I'm that if I'm with a kid and it's their first session without a parent in the room, that looks a little bit different, right? Because they are now very nervous. They're by themselves with this person that they've met 2 or 3 times, maybe. And again, that starts out with our first kind of project of art making. We tap into some mindfulness and do a basic watercolor painting. But as sessions go on, once there are treatment goals developed, projects and directives go into that. With the younger ones, I usually split a session 25 open art. So the art is therapy, and then 25 minutes of the art directive, which is where we'll do something like the feeling chart that I showed you, or do the mood check-ins, or even something like the bridge drawing, just because that really shows that focuses in on problem solving and just emotional regulation. And I also start all my sessions, all the treatment with emotional regulation, because I want to know how people can talk about or express their feelings. And if that is a big part of the work, then we're starting right there. It's a subjective amount of time. The time that it takes is different for everybody, whether it's art therapy or talk therapy or a different kind of modality of therapy. But that's essentially kind of just one session in a nutshell. You know, the processing that Susan and I talked about, that she talked about a minute ago, about going through the art and what's kind of there, and just maybe noticing, like, hey, you colored that house red, but you told me that red is your angry color. Like, what is happening in that house that it's red? And seeing what comes out of that.
So, Ellen, we've got a couple of questions are coming in. I'm getting all excited now. All right. So, in the Q&A, somebody said, "What kind of mental health concerns or challenges respond well to art therapy?"
Okay, I see it. Yes. So what kind of challenges concern? So I have seen lots of success with anxiety, depression, and ADHD. I feel like those three are probably my bread and butter and the ones that I work with the most. And even though it is different, every kid is experiencing something different, I am able to make my sessions fit them. And then I also saw a question in the chat, like, how does that specifically help ADHD anxiety? Well, to go into the question about the mental health concerns and challenges, so ADHD and anxiety, what we focus on with that. So the ADHD is whether it's the inattentive or the hyperactivity type, we're giving them tools to be able to regulate those really big feelings that they're feeling. So the ADHD, a lot of times you're feeling yourself be completely overwhelmed with all the things around you, and that's where the behavior is coming from. So we're using art therapy within the sessions and being able to take it to the home to slow down, right? Because it's not the I need to talk to somebody for 50 minutes, but I can sit here and draw for 50 minutes and just kind of talk about what's happening in the drawing as it works. With the anxiety, we focus a lot on self-esteem, self-worth, like practicing, like reframing thoughts and growth mindset. Um, yeah, I
Okay,
think
so
that would
I've
be
got
that.
one, and I'll add to what Ellen said. Everybody can benefit from art therapy. My favorite clients are the ones who are like, "This is stupid. I don't want to do it." And I'm like, just kicks and giggles. Can you just do a little bit? And they're the ones that then ask, they want to actually do art therapy all the time. So I think art
Mhm.
therapy has a space for every age and every kind of concern. Honestly, I try and somehow integrate it with all of my sessions, even though I'm not as well trained or as creative as Ellen. But somebody did ask, did you? Well, I'm going to do Dottie's first. So she said, I'd love to know more about the art journaling Ellen is doing on her own or other activities I can do independently. So, Ellen, this is a great question because so many of our
Yeah,
clients are doing
sure.
is to say, how can I do on the daily to help with this notion of regulation? Because we're living in kind of interesting days these days. So, can you help with what they can just do on their own? And
Yeah,
specifically,
so the whole reason I started the art journaling for myself was just to kind of give myself a separate outlet to separate my to set a boundary, I guess, for myself in the art that is being done in sessions with other kids. And like I'm holding that space for the clients, right? But using this art journal for myself, and all it is, it's just like a sketchbook or a notebook. I do a lot of collaging or a lot of watercolor. A lot of things that you can do independently is really just draw. Like I'll catch myself doodling like on a napkin in a restaurant just because that's what it is. That's where I'm at. The art journaling I do find successful though, because I can put in different things about just kind of how my day was going, do like a mood check-in. Like I am statements are something that I do in it. So basically taking something that happened. So maybe I had like a really difficult day. But the biggest thing is that I was there. Like I showed up and that's one thought of it.
I'm trying to find something I have, Dottie. I have a coloring book. You know that one
Yeah.
drawing that Ellen had earlier that had all the different shapes and she just colored every little piece of it a little color. Now I'm gonna be honest, my friends gave it to me and it has dirty words in it. So when you when you fill it out and you do it by the numbers, sometimes it says what you don't want to say out loud. But really the purpose of it is to get your attention focused on one thing. Because most of
Mhm.
us go through this world kind of living from our neck up, where we're either worried about something that's going to happen in the future that hasn't happened yet, and our body feels as if it's happened, or we're focused on something in the past that we messed up or did wrong. And, our mind just has a really hard time being in the present moment. So, this notion of mindfulness, this notion of art and music, it's all about getting your mind to get in the here and now, present, very focused on one specific thing. So it can be sketching, it can be a coloring book, it can be listening to music. I know it's not necessarily drawing, but music is art. You can just sit there and put on your favorite artist and give yourself 10 minutes to do deep breathing with that music. But what I love when I'm doing art is that, I mean, it's like 2 hours are gone and I feel like I've been there for 10 minutes and my body just feels super regulated. So there's lots of things that you can do with
Yeah,
that.
and sometimes even in sessions, like a kid will come in and be like, I am not right. Like it's not it today. I was like, okay, so what will help you right now? And a lot of times I will be like, can I just like color and listen to music? And I'm like, great, like let's do it. And like 10, 15 minutes in, and they're like, you see their body like relax, and they're like, this is what happened today. I'm like, okay, tell me. And they're just able to really work through that just in an environment that has changed for them.
Yeah. There's another great question here that says, can you really study art therapy? And this week alone, there was a young woman that was trying to figure out what to do with her life. And she's a beautiful artist. And I said, have you ever thought about being an art therapist? And she's like, I can get paid to be an art therapist. And I'm like, yeah. So can you tell them about your education
Sure.
and how you
Yes. So to start from the beginning, I went to my undergrad. I did a bachelor in art and a minor in psychology because to apply to an art therapy school, you need to have some background in psychology. I completed a master's of professional development and create art therapy and creativity development at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York. It's a 2-year program where I had classes that focused on like the materials that we use and family therapy and how to run groups and child development. So a lot of the things that a lot of my other colleagues have studied just with using art as an additional modality. Um, the 2-year program, I worked at a day school during that time as my internship and then at an inpatient hospital in Harlem. So it is something that you can study. I went to Pratt. George Washington, just over in DC, has a program. Kind of programs all over the place. There's a ton in New York, but you can study it. Or I
Yeah.
did study it. Yeah,
Doa, I think, is the local school, somewhere that's Shenandoah is a
I think
university that's
so.
nearby that has this as one of their curriculums. So I think
And
we
then
get a
you
lot
do,
of
it is something that you should or need to have a master's in order to be like accredited through like the art therapy credentialing board. There's a couple different levels. So there's like an registered art therapist, and then I'm a board certified art therapist. So there's like a big exam that I took and have to renew it every 5 years for the CEUs. So
that. Yeah. And we really refer people to Ellen. I mean, talk therapy is just not for everybody. Or they don't have, especially what's nice for kids is they don't have that concrete language to know how to express feelings. They're not supposed to, right? We're asking them to do something that they're not even equipped to do. So art is a really beautiful way and play to kind of help them do that. It says art therapy can be in groups with kids or you only work with one at a time. So they're wondering if you can do this as groups as well.
yes, and I will take this time now to introduce that in the summer, right after school starts, I am going to be doing some art therapy groups. We're really going to try and help this take off. Right now, it's just some art therapy groups for girls, focusing on self-esteem and being able to develop that positive self-talk and increase self-esteem. Um, we're looking at 2 split into age groups, 7 to 9 as one, and then 10 to 13 as the other, just to kind of get the groups, kind of age consistent, between like middle school and like elementary school. But I'm open to whether it becomes a boys group, if a lot of boys are interested in kind of the self-esteem stuff, I am here for it and I'm ready to take it. So to answer the question, yes, it can be done in groups. And I've done groups before and they're super fun to see, these kids come together kind of over a common goal and what can be done through it. Um, I haven't done one in a while, but I'm really excited that I think that we can get this going, and it starts right after school ends. So if you need your kids to do something from 4 to 5 on either a Tuesday or a Wednesday, I am taking signups. We'll have these out in the office soon. But
Ellen,
yeah,
can you do something kind of, I don't know if your computer moves, but can you show them your room that you work in so they have an idea
I
of the space?
can. Yeah. So behind me, we also have a play therapist. So there's a bunch of play stuff behind us. And then I recently moved into this room. It's been my third one, but we have, can't really see it, but there's a little sitting area. There's all my art supplies back there and four really huge windows, which is
Yeah.
really great now that the sun is up really late. So
Yeah, it's a really big space that I mean, I've put probably 25 people in there at a time when we've done different kind of seminars and such. So we got plenty of space. So we're excited about that. Um, okay. What about do you have the other groups that we're doing, Ellen?
we do have the grief group. And then, well, the next thing, well, the grief group is going to be held virtually. We are still taking signups for that. It's going to be held by Mercinder Witherspoon and another resident that we have. And that is just kind of, it's going to be virtual. So if that's something that you're interested in processing your grief, that is a great outlet. And then lastly, Susan is
Well,
going to
I'll tell you
do
about mine,
our
but
next webinar.
the main reason we're doing that grief seminar is we are in close proximity to the ice rink where we lost a lot of our community members in that awful airplane crash. And so we just wanted to do something that created a safe place for people to come and just process, because there's just a lot of, even loss of a job, that grief can come in so many interesting ways. It doesn't always mean that somebody has passed. A divorce can be grief. A changing of jobs can be grief, or being laid off can be grief. So we live in an area where there's been a lot of that going on, and we want to do our part to kind of help support that. And to kind of build off of that, we will get all of these kinks figured out for the next. We still don't, we're all talking in the background, have no idea kind of what happened with this particular webinar, but thankfully it is recorded. So if anybody did miss it, they're going to be getting a copy of this in their mailbox. But I'm going to be focusing on how to regulate in very uncertain times. As therapists, we're trying to pay attention to, when our clients come in, what seems to be on their minds. Is there a common theme that we're seeing? And as a community of professionals, what can we do to help support people? So I'm going to be doing a webinar on Friday, April 11th from 12 to 1, just speaking about how to regulate in uncertain times. And it's not meant to be political. So if that's what you're hoping for, that's not what it will be. It will be to kind of look at what has us in the state that we're in. We're in a very diversified, polarized space right now, and it's not healthy. If you're constantly feeling overwhelmed or triggered or reading nonstop different things, your body's going to feel as if those things that you're worried about are happening. Oh, thank you, Emily. She said thank you for the webinar. I feel like everyone needs it and wants it. And so I was a little nervous to take it on, Emily, just to be really certain, because I don't want it to become political, but I do want it to be a source of hope and how we can all regulate. And hopefully build this bridge. I have found that so much of the work that I'm seeing with people that are really struggling right now, I think trauma is at the root of so many of the things that we struggle with. And I find that people become polarized when they're afraid, when they are uncertain, and when there's a lot of a lot of things happening around them that are outside of their control. And so for me, that's just a trauma response. And so I'm going to be talking about it from a trauma lens. And then I'm going to be talking to you about things like containment and about how to take care of yourself during this time. So that will be my webinar in April. So I hope you guys can join. Is that the end of our slide deck, Ellen?
That is the end of our slide deck.
Okay, well, we've got like 4 more minutes. If anybody just has questions about my upcoming seminar or anything about art, we're here to answer it. Okay, hold on. Great. Here's another question that came in on the other side here, Ellen. It says, what advice do you have for parents who want to use art as a tool to support emotional well-being? Which is the main reason that we created this seminar, is that we wanted to give you guys tools that you might be able to do from home too. So, Ellen, any advice that you can give for this mom?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, in the most basic level, is having things accessible and giving them that time to create. Executive functioning is sometimes things that we do, and I have worked with clients and families to put into place a specific time of the day that they do something creative. Now, if that's their like building Legos or blocks or something, that is that. But the feeling chart that I posted and the emotional regulation time, just having them make that, you can find those online and um, kind of give them that piece to be like show you how they are feeling. A lot of times we'll also do like what tell me what your anger looks like. Like if you could give me your anger and if he showed up, what would he look like? And then they draw that out. And now we're understanding how that anger is related to that person. You can process it and work it through. It's like, oh, so this person's really big and loud. And they're like, yeah, I yell a lot when I get mad. I yell a lot at my mom or at my dad or at my brother. Um, it's also the art is therapy piece, like Susan was saying, the coloring books, just giving them that time to really just sink into something that's not homework or forced tasking, but just giving them something, a time to process and just kind of regulate after their day. I know there's breaks and stuff in school, but going to school for like 8 hours a day is a big chunk of your day. So now for kids to come home at like 2, 3 o'clock and have other things to do, whether they're running off to sports or running off to like clubs or something, that little bit of time is giving them the things that they can use to access emotionally how they're feeling just through the art.
So also just to let you know, I just posted in oopsie, I didn't mean to do that. I just posted in the chat a link to something called therapistaid.com. They have worksheets, different things. I will tell you that you can download a feelings chart for children. Just Google that and download a piece of paper. And if you've got young kids, sometimes they don't know how to express what they're feeling, but they can point to a smiley face or a sad face or an angry face, and they can tell you what they're feeling. And so sometimes just being able to name it with a picture is going to start the process of the body letting it go and allowing them to hopefully work towards problem solving with you as well. But just like
And
I
the
did, yeah, go ahead.
feelings can like develop. So the younger it is, right? We have like happy, sad, mad, and like tired. Like those are the four you might get. But then we're starting to realize that like I'm just kind of annoyed. Like I'm not full on mad, but I'm annoyed. And this is why I'm annoyed because this didn't go right. And then we get into like disappointment and we get into maybe like we're nervous about something. And it's just kind of the expansion of those feelings is kind of what I've been able to see with some kids with the art. Or like, oh, why does the mad and the sad look the same? And it's like, well, it is the same. And it's like, okay, tell me why it's the same. And now we're learning that it's like, oh, you were just frustrated that what you wanted didn't work out. So that's what this turned into.
So I think, well, if there's another question, I mean, I don't mind staying on if anybody's got a question. But I think for the majority of us, we have reached. I'm just checking all the Q and A's. I am. No one's posting anything new. But I really, Ellen, I just want to thank you for doing this. Listen, I'm someone that I love to get out in front of the community and talk to people, but my therapist, sometimes that's not their favorite thing to do, like getting up and doing this. And Ellen worked really hard on this presentation, and I want to thank you for all your hard work. And I want to thank you for your passion for what you give to kids and for the balance that you give to our center. So you are a gem for us, Ellen. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. And if anybody has questions, you can call us. I know Michelle Heckerman is on, she's in your group somewhere, but she answers the phone from us, and she's probably one of the most loving people I've ever met. And if you've got a question or don't understand something or you want to schedule with us, just give us a call at our main number, and Michelle will be happy to make sure that she gets you with the right people.